Hey folks, welcome to a bonus interview for the episode on The Brave. The day that we put The Brave out, I got contacted by Charles Evans Jr. He was one of the producers of the film, wanted to come on the air and talk a little bit about his experience working on The Brave, so sat down with him 2 days after that, recorded this interview. I'll have this available for folks to listen to here, or I'll go ahead and cut this back into the episode as well, so people have a full experience of listening about The Brave. Thanks so much, and I hope you enjoy this bonus interview. So I've been doing a little digging. It looks like you're kind of destined for show business. I didn't realize that you had a famous family.
I do. Everybody in my family are filmmakers. My mom, my dad, my cousins, my uncle, and uncle being the most known of them, Robert Evans.
Were you interested in that as a child, or were you just like, no, I'm going to do my own thing?
Well, it's the only thing I ever thought of doing. So, yeah, and mostly because my mom let me spend time with her while she was editing her documentaries and all, and on 16 millimeter film, and she'd do it in the all night long, and it was our thing, and it was very special and subversive because I could stay away from school the next day, and it was kind of great. Yeah, that's all I ever thought of doing.
Did you go to school for it?
Undergrad, short story writing, Berkeley, grad, USC Film School. After I graduated, I got several writing jobs, low budget, kind of made. I was determined to write a serial killer script kind of in the early 90s, just after I finished film school and made my short film that won a bunch of awards. And so I ended up getting a couple of writing jobs. I don't even remember the name of the company. It was a low budget movie it was going to be shot in 26 days and called Bungalow 9. And I'm sure it wasn't probably ever made, and then adaptation for my uncle at Paramount, a project called The Cinch that Paul Gallo ended up rewriting and I don't think was made. I'm not sure. I don't think it was made. And then I had to take care of my drug addiction at the time. So I had to just focus on that for a little bit. Worked at Disney as a development executive. I went to work for a friend of mine who's a director, Randall Kleiser, and tried to get people he was at the time doing Honey, I Blew Up the Kid and at Touchstone. And when I left his company to start my own, he was signed up to do a right to life thriller. So that seemed like a big success. And then we found out that the fellow who sold the project and, got financing for a Taylor Hackford draft kind of scavenged his own story from the 60s. And it was based on something else. So it just all fell apart. But I started my company in 92, and then The Brave was one of my first projects.
So how did that come to you?
Touchstone had a in-house competition with their executives. They gave them each a fund of money to do with what they would like to do and kind of let the cream rise to the top sort of idea. And my company got 2 of those projects. One of them was a documentary on comedy classes where people took a comedy class for the first time and performed a stand-up for the first time at the end of it. And it was pretty funny, and it turned out a little too raunchy and dark for Touchstone, but at the time, and so that wasn't released, but at least it got done. And the other one was The Brave, and we had an opportunity with all of the kind of enthusiasm for Paul McCudden's script that was generated. We were kind of the devil whispering in the fellow's ear who controlled the project, a fellow named Aziz. We were saying, you've got to direct this. It's your project. This is your chance. And, top drawer directors were really pushing for it. And he took meetings with them, and, it was like Jodie Foster and Oliver Stone. And it was a kind of one of those leaving Las Vegas paradigm story where you say what's going to happen and it's so bleak you can't believe that it's going to happen, and the surprise is that it does. And I guess sort of the model of it, a homeless man who lives in a dump with his wife and kid is offered more money than he's ever seen in his life to die a week later in a snuff film, and he takes it, and it's about his last week on Earth before going through with the deal. And it was a dark story. The scene that really shocked everyone in the beginning is the snuff filmmaker walking around the lead subject, talking to him about how he will be carved up and how, kind of like the mechanics of the snuff film that will be happening at the end of the week, and the kind of theater of the mind stuff that is left a lot of people shaken, and I think was a hook to some people to have this hanging over the narrative that followed. And Aziz decided I came to him and offered like 4 shooting days with a crew, with a budget like 75 grand or something, to make show what you can do with this, material. And at the time we had Benicio del Toro cast. We were cast, crewed, located, and it was like 5 days away from shooting when he didn't show up to work on a Monday. And we heard that he was last seen fleeing his home before it exploded in flames, and the bodies of his daughter and wife were found bludgeoned inside, and he was missing. And so everybody, Touchstone, graciously or courageously stepped away and said, let's do something else. And we thought this would just go nowhere, and it was a terrible, horrific thing that happened. And then Johnny called. He had read the script. He responded strongly to it and said he was determined to make the film into Cannes with us, and meeting a bunch of different prospective financiers. He wanted to, direct, and he said he would star, and that was the lure for them, because he would forego his acting fee so he could star, so he could direct. And Jeremy Thomas, I didn't know how, brilliant a filmmaker he was, and, who he was, until we met with him, and he was listed as a critical element, or I forget the exact phrase that financiers use, that essential element, that's it. And we got financing like $5 million to make this movie, and went from there. And Johnny really wanted the look and feel of Amir Costa Rica that he had grown so close with in Arizona Dreams. And so we got the production designer and DP for that film, Vilko Filak, and I forget the production designer's name at this moment, but both brilliant, brilliant men, and who had a really tight relationship with Johnny, and were going to have his back through this whole thing. And I think technically they did. What no one bargained for was Marlon Brando, this rogue menace force that called halfway through production. The last 2 days were going to be the snuff filmmaker scene. And he said, Johnny, I hear you gave away my part. I said, what? That role is mine. The snuff filmmaker, I have to play this role. And well, we don't have any money for it. We passed it already. And if we let this actor go, you'd have to be paid scale. So I'll work for scale. So we're starting to think, okay, well, Marlon Brando working for scale, this is pretty exciting. And he brings something great to the table. And he essentially was a roadblock to momentum. He refused to say the lines on the page. He wouldn't. 2 script days on this set, in this downtown LA, snuff filmmaker's lair. It turned into 11 days. He never read the lines that set up the entire narrative that follows. So it was awful. And he said, doesn't cut together. I'll read it as scripted. I'll read anything you'd like. Just let's do this. He's riffing on the nobility of death and playing a harmonica and, doing all kinds of shit in his wheelchair that he wrote into the script himself. And, he made a character, but it had nothing to do with the movie that followed, really. Jeremy Thomas tells us that we got into the Cannes Film Festival without anybody seeing the movie. And based on Jeremy's relationship with that festival, which had been long lasting, and, he's one of the handful of people there that had that kind of cachet. And so we realized this isn't working. He tried to cut around it, and, it was mystifying and moody, but cryptic. And suddenly you were wondering what the hell's going on. And he said we re-rented the space, got Vilko and the production designer on a plane coming back. And as they were in the air, Marlon on a phone call says to Johnny, "It's not that I won't say those words, Johnny. I can't say those words. I can't help you." And so Johnny has a decision to make that it didn't really seem like he thought about it too hard, but he decided he didn't want to be the first director in film history to fire, recast, and reshoot Marlon Brando. And we rolled with it. And at that point, we had gone over, so Johnny was personally financing the overages. And, it was very much his story to tell. And what resulted is one of the threw stuff off of the tracks early on in the story. And we don't know really exactly what's going on, I think. What happened in Cannes was he got his first bad reviews really ever. And they were some mean reviews and too harsh. But I have a feeling that the fact that the film critics the screening for the film critics, which is at 7 a.m., after many of them had been out very late, and the film broke during that projection. And for 17 minutes, they had to sit around and wait till a splicer was found, put together, and rethread, and get it going again. And I have a feeling that contributed to the meanness or the edge in the reviews. So as a result, it was distributed everywhere but in America, which Johnny owned those rights personally himself to distribute it. And he never chose to let it be seen. All he had to do was to call that guy back and shoot that one 5-page scene with him in a location that was already reset and ready to go. And he chose not to do that. Breaks my heart.
Yeah, it really sounds like he chose Marlon Brando over the film itself.
Or thought it would work. I don't know. He didn't, I guess, fight for maybe he thought it was going to work, I guess. I have to say.
What was the period of time, and you don't have to be exact, but after the whole incident with Aziz versus Johnny Depp calling, what was that period of time?
I don't remember exactly, but it was less than a year. It was maybe half a year. It was 6 months or something. I think really unfortunate missed opportunity was a pitch from a fellow named Bill Kane, a Jesuit priest who was a brilliant playwright. And I think he was doing stuff at Touchstone at the time. He heard of the story, read the script, and came back with his own approach to the story that was a direct Christ allegory. It was so it was so moving. I remember crying a lot, during the pitch, even on the phone. And Johnny at that time had sequestered himself with Danny and never got to hear any of these great ideas. One of them is it's so unfortunate, but because it never, was embraced, but was to open the film with him learning, with our lead learning that he has terminal cancer before he's offered all of this money. So he knows he's going to die anyway. And so all of that is taken off the table. That why would you want to kill yourself stuff is, a non-issue. And Johnny never got to hear that idea. And I think it would have helped our connection with the lead character.
Where did you guys shoot all this? Like, where are these locations at?
Randsburg, California, an abandoned mine that it was so surreally perfect that as we went on a 3-week location scout, our location scout was so dedicated. He was out every day for something like, I don't know, 120 days or something, and came back only on the day that his wife was delivering a child. And the last location that we looked at, we were looking at all of these dumps and reprocessing places in, Arizona, Texas, in kind of very arid environments. And the last place we found was that place, Randsburg, and it, like, everybody knew right away that it was it.
What was kind of your experience working on this? It sounds pretty stressful.
The stressful part was completion bond was a bitch. I have a feeling it always is, but maybe people are used to those hurdles. And we had what we thought was a start date, and then people have dedicated their schedules to the project and withhold that document for as long as they can, and you have to spend like a lot of your own money like to keep it afloat, until their criteria are fulfilled. And that was very stressful, threading that needle. And then after that, things went really, really pretty smoothly. A shining star, I thought, was Iggy Pop's score. Peter Gabriel courted Johnny very hard, wrote what for me is one of the best scores ever, original scores in Last Temptation of Christ. And Johnny turned that down in favor for Iggy, in deference to Iggy. And Iggy turned in something that was, they spent a lot of time on it. They budgeted a lot of time and came up with something moving and unexpected and an original sound, and really impressed me. He channeled sort of that Last Temptation of Christ world music sound, and quite beautiful. I have nothing but like admiring things to say about Johnny. He paid dearly for this project. He worked hard, more days on this than any other one in his life, I imagine, because, the pre-production and the production and the post and the can and all that. And, he's usually he can go in and out of a project quicker than that.
Yeah, I found it interesting. I was talking on the episode about the interviews that I saw from Khan, where he was just saying how difficult the shoot was and how tough it is being a director. Did that come through on the set?
He had this thing where he wouldn't write shot lists before the shoot day, and he made it a little harder on himself than it had to be, but we had a lot of time scheduled. I think it was like a 40-day shoot, and I think we had a lot of time to create a really vivid world in that environment, on that location, and things went surprisingly smoothly. And there's such good vibes with Vilko and Kreka, we called him. And, with Vilko and Kreka, he's so comfortable, and they had a lot of fun. It was, I thought, really smooth. might have been really stressful or hard for him in ways that I didn't see, but filled with admiration for his gift.
Ultimately, how does this project affect you?
It was incredible education, and sort of been around films forever, but as far as I can remember, but first person, having the opportunity to sort of walk on the red carpet, with a film that you've had a lot to do with getting made, and it was a great thrill and something that I think is an incentive to try to relive education and moving on to other projects that you love.
Do you think, is there a chance that the film could ever come out in the US?
I mean, if Johnny ever changed his mind, I think he would. I don't foresee that happening. An academic exercise would be to cut out the Marlon shots and cut in the casting shots of this guy who read for it. And I never did that, but, and I got the footage and all, but that could be a very telling exercise, and how strong the film could be without the Marlon intrusion. I've just come to learn recently he's done this with a lot of other projects. That was his sickness, and he fucked up every project that he got involved with for a long period of time. And unfortunately, Johnny was a casualty of that. But he wanted me to not intervene with Marlon, and he asked me to let it go, and I was deferential to him for that. He had paid a great price to tell his story.
Well, I would love sometime if we could talk about The Aviator. That sounds like a fascinating story as well, if you were up for it.
I think I'd rather... I'll think about it.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Pleasure, man.
Jesus was way cool. Everybody liked Jesus. Everybody wanted to hang out with him. Anything he wanted to do, he did. He turned water into wine, and if he wanted to, he could have turned wheat into marijuana, or sugar into cocaine, or vitamin pills into amphetamines. He walked on the water and swam on the land. He would tell these stories, and people would listen. He was really cool. If you were blind or lame, you just went to Jesus, and he would put his hands on you, and you would be healed. That's so cool. He could have played guitar better than Hendrix. He could have told the future. He could have baked the most delicious cake in the world. He could have scored more goals than Wayne Gretzky. He could have danced better than Baryshnikov. Jesus could have been funnier than any comedian you could think of. Jesus was way cool. He told people to eat his body and drink his blood. That's so cool. Jesus was so cool. But then some people got jealous of how cool he was, so they killed him. But then he rose from the dead. He rose from the dead, danced around, and went up to heaven. I mean, that's so cool. Jesus was way cool. No wonder there are so many Christians.